Hello viewer and welcome to this show, The Bible Journey. My name is Nixon Ratemo. With me on set today are three of our pastors. That is from my left hand side, Pastor John Kabira Wakabira. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
And next to him is Pastor Dan Abuya. Welcome again.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And next to me here is Pastor Peter Nyaga. Karibu sana.
Thank you and welcome our viewer.
Now, today we are going to be studying the book of Genesis, chapter 35. There are several lessons that we want to learn from this particular chapter, which just comes after, right after 34. And you know the big thing that happened, the massacre that happened in the book of Genesis, chapter 34. So we are continuing, continuing the same story, now looking at the movement of Jacob and his family from the land of these Canaanites unto Bethel. But before we get any further, I would like us to have a word of prayer. Pastor Nyaga, if you can lead us.
Let's pray. Our gracious Father in heaven, we thank you so much as we begin this very important discussion. We invite you to be with us and be with our viewers. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Remember, you can always interact with us on our social media platforms. That is on Twitter at Hope_Kenya and on Facebook, Hope Channel Kenya. Always use the hashtag The Bible Journey. Now, let's start this discussion by looking at the major themes that come out of the book of Genesis, chapter 35. If I can start with Pastor Dan Abuya.
Right. Chapter 35 is a mixed bag, so to speak. There's some beautiful things happening there. There is a rebirth, there is a renewal experience of Jacob and his family. They go back to Bethel, you know.
After the incidents of Genesis 34?
Chapter 34, which was, a painful spot in their memory. Yet also we find 3 record deaths recorded in chapter 35. Deborah, one of the handmaids dies here. We find Rachael and also the patriarch Isaac. We also encounter their deaths here. Yeah. Nevertheless, still, you find some other precious gems, hidden in here. See, the providence of God, Jacob's name is changed, to Israel. This is, I think, a flashpoint which we have to also put a spotlight on.
And Pastor Kabira, what do you see?
I'm able to see God still insisting on the blessings, God's faithfulness when He blesses you until the end, despite what happens in between. Right. It's somehow the conclusion of a little bit of the life of Isaac and Rachael. They are able to exit this stage so that we will be introduced to new characters. We'll be getting introduced to new characters to set up the conclusion of the children of Jacob or the children of Israel in the end. So I think it's more of a chapter that deals with conclusion of a lot of things and then introducing a new character, a new way of thinking, to be able to cater for the chapters that are coming there much after.
Pastor, do you have anything to add, or we should get to verse 1?
Yeah, maybe just something to add is, I'm looking at chapter 35.
Yes.
As of course, basing from chapter 34, I can say chapter 34 is the darkest chapter in Jacob's life. Then we see chapter 35, a gracious God. Because what Jacob has done in chapter 34 deserves his death. But we see God again coming to him. And as you find even in verse number 10, he changes his name and assures him to be with him. So I'm seeing, one, a God who is very gracious. But also number 2, I'm finding the difference between God and man. Jacob was trying to do all he could to save himself, to protect himself. And God has been watching him to let him do all that he was able to do until when it comes to the very dead end. Then God comes in at that particular time. And that's what we see from verse number 1, because verse number 1 appears when verse number that 1, which is the last verse in chapter that 4, hangs on a very negative point with the controversy with the sons and Jacob. But then God comes and says, in that particular conflict, he says the saying, arise and go. It reminds him of the promise and his directions. I think he's telling him, I had commanded you, you didn't obey, all these consequences because of your disobedience, but I still am a gracious God. I can still give you another chance. So that's why I'm looking at chapter that 5.
Let's connect it with verse 1, where it says, and God said unto Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel, and dwell there, and make there an altar unto God that appeared unto thee when thou fleedest from the face of Esau thy brother. And you are talking about God still coming to him. He has reached a dead end. God still comes in to help him out. And I'm asking myself, how does it feel for these other people when God seems to be siding with some people? He seems to be siding with Jacob in as much as he has done so much evil. He has killed, his children have killed almost a whole nation, and they have deceived them, but still God goes ahead to side with them. And even today, God still sides with his children, but at the end of the day, he's the one who created even these other people. How does it feel to such people?
I think we can understand that when we come to the reality that God's mind is not human mind. How God looks at things is not how human beings look at things. Now, let's go back to the experience in chapter 34. What has happened? Jacob and his son have agreed to get into a covenant with Canaanites. Now, maybe you need to understand that Jacob never intended his sons to, even he didn't have a clue of what his sons were planning to do. He was obsessed by him being accepted in the community, and he was willing to intermarry his sons and daughters to the Canaanites.
But of course they refused. They didn't allow it.
No, that is Jacob. Then his sons are not out for intermarriage.
Yeah.
They want to hatch a trick to make sure that they kill these people, the revenge. So there's a difference between the mind of Jacob and the minds of the sons. The sons want to kill, to revenge. But Jacob wants to allow the children of Israel to intermarry with Canaanites. Now, this is where I am coming from. Remember when God spoke to him, when we discovered in chapter 1 the incidents between him and his brother when he took the birthright of his brother. The reason why God allowed him to go to Laban's place, one of the reasons, if you remember, is that he was not supposed to marry from the Canaanites. So he was requested to go to his uncle's place. It is very clear in the Bible that Israelites were not supposed to intermarry with the Canaanites.
Yeah.
Jacob is aware of this. He knows this is the reason why I went, it's part of the reason why I went to my uncle's place. But here Jacob is, because of the wealth and the property and the security that is being promised, he is allowing himself to compromise what God had given as a direct command. Don't intermarry. He gives consent to that. Now, I'm looking at the killings that his sons decides to do, and of course they succeeded doing, as a lesser evil. And that's why God knows his promise, cannot change his mind. If these sons could not kill the Canaanites, what would have happened? They would have settled and certainly intermarrying, contrary to the plan of God. So at times God uses situations to further his plan. And so I'm not looking at it like God is siding with a particular people. God is always siding with his plan, because his plan has to be. But no, his plans passes through people's lives. And there are consequences of the choices people make as God is implementing his plan, because you cannot change God's plan.
Pastor Dan, you know, I'm still in the shoes of these people who are not favored by God.
Or seemingly favored.
Yeah. and I'm asking myself, God keeps on favoring Pastor Dan and keeps on disfavoring me. I'm asking myself, why is it so? He created me also.
That's right. And you're right. On the other hand, it is not wholly true about, you know, us being favored and, you know, some other people like not being hated. There is a big question that we need to settle, and we can only do that when we understand the mind of God, the plan of God, God's agenda. In man's eyes, the favor of God is present, it is current, it's immediate, it is what I want, it is the blessings, the provisions of every day. But in the mind of God, he has a big agenda. We need to remember that. God's agenda is ultimate, it is you know, cosmic. And so when we read in Romans chapter 9, it helps you to understand and put things in perspective. People are favored for service, and it is purely and rightly so. It is the prerogative of God. It is his right to decide who he wants to use. So he's not favoring them, Jacob, in the sense that they are better than the Canaanites. He is not favoring them that they are holier, because they are not, obviously. It is because already he has elected them for service as an agency, as an agent, as a channel to bless the whole world. So it is purely on that thought. Otherwise, the Canaanites are equally precious to God. And even today, if they are servants of God who seem to be favored, the issue is not really for salvation. God favors us for a cause, because he desires and he has elected to use us to be a channel to bless many more others. I think that sorts a lot of confusion, which we often...
and I think as we get to chapter 6, this will be very much clear. Because we'll be going back to when God says, Esau, Jacob I loved, and Esau I despised, I hated. But in chapter 6, we're going to see a very prosperous Esau.
That's right.
So I think in chapter 6, we will be able to discuss the election of God. And what does it really mean? So that we are not stuck by thinking that God has favorites. He doesn't have favorites.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And Pastor, as you come in also, I'm trying to also look at what Jacob has done. You know, when God appeared to him, still in Padan Aram, he said unto him, that is in 31 verse 3. 12. 31 verse...
The two of them, yes, or even verse 1, verse 2.
Verse 2, yeah, and Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. 3, and the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers, and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. You know, the instruction was, as we have already said earlier, go to your land, the land of your fathers, that was in Canaan. But he still did it dallies. And you remember we mentioned, I think in chapter 32, how he spent a lot of years before he got into this place. Up to this point, he has not gotten unto his father in Canaan. Could it be that all these things are befalling him? He would have avoided them if he did just as God instructed.
Yeah, the verse you're looking for that connects us to chapter 35 is that 1 verse 12 and 13.
Okay.
But as we've already said, let's look at it. The Bible begins with this adverb of conjunction, or in addition to, then, and, thereafter. After the parentheses of chapter 34, we introduced to chapter 35. God had previously said, go to Bethel. He is now still repeating it again, go to Bethel. There are some 2-3 things I will mention here. When he was told to go to Bethel, Jacob knew that he needed to get back home. but he still felt the weight of expectation of working and serving until God told him, you need to leave. He knew he ought to leave. We had said that prior. But it needed God to, like poke him and tell him, move. Because sometimes you get comfortable, or you get so much sucked in with the things that are there, you forget to move on to where you're supposed to be. I don't want to put that spiritually. I will apply much later. But here comes, this man moves on to Succoth. We talked about Succoth. Succoth is booths. He builds there. He almost stays there. But then he realizes this is still not near where God had asked me to go. And then he moves to Shechem. Shechem means shoulder. Somewhere where it was accessible. We talk of it as a town because it's a town. The attachment that some commentators put it is like he wanted to move near a town because of what we said in chapter 34, facilities and for the sake of his family, to be able to interact. He did not want to go to an alone place. But then God is telling him, that is not for you to worry, because what you're getting worried about, I provided you with. I was with you. When you built the booths at Succoth, that is not what I was asking, because I will give you, God's instructions is, I'll give you land. You don't need to build something else. Your house should not be defined by a small piece of land. When he moves to Shechem, God tells him it's not about the support of the family. It's not support of the city, because I am your God. I'll provide you with descendants. You'll have your own town. And so he tells him, go to the house of God. That is the meaning of Bethel. So in real essence, he's been relying on his human power. He's been moving from where he can build his own house, that is Succoth. He goes to where there are other people around him, that is Shechem. But God tells him, my intention actually is for you to go to Bethel, house of God. I want you to be with me. That is what he's telling him. But of course, we all see, as I'm saying, it's because it's how it begins. It means it's connected to chapter 34. And God, it may not be punishment, it may not be, but God is doing, what he's doing is, he wants his mission still to be accomplished. You may wander away, you may go away from the vector that God has chosen for you, but God is calling him back. Please still come back. Of course, it's a challenge to be able to walk in a straight line when it comes to matters of God. But at the same time, God does not tire on you. He still wants, as Pastor keeps on saying here, it's about the mission. He puts you on focus and he'll help you achieve it, even if sometimes we'll have to go astray.
Now, Jacob eventually decides to move, but is this action triggered by what God is saying really, or is it also out of fear, Pastor Dan?
Well, I wouldn't rule out fear. But neither will I focus there too much. There is a clear command of God. Move, arise, go to Bethel. And, let me pause and say this. We all need the house of God. There are particular instances in our lives where, you like it, you don't like it, you need God. This was quite something to deal with in chapter 34. And so God's reminder still shows his grace. You know what? You can be re-energized, you can be renewed. That was dark, that was ugly. But when you come to my house, there's always fresh provision. There's always fresh providence. So other than the command of God, I do not rule out fear. Because also we find that is, I'm looking for the verse where, verse 5. When you read verse 5, quite obviously they were afraid how the nations and the compatriots of Shechem are going to deal with them after massacring the men there. But we are told that as they journeyed, the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. So there was an expectation that people would retaliate. Alliances would be formed against them. But the hand of God was still, surrounding them. So yes, there is fear, there is human fear. But the bigger picture demands that we accept that, it is the command of God reminding him, remember where you need to be.
Yeah.
It is at Bethel.
But I'm also
not where you
looking
are.
at it,
Right.
this command has been there for all these years. He has not acted as
Right.
immediate as he does right now.
Right.
So he's, you know, at this point, immediately he calls all his family together and
Right.
says, put away strange gods. And exactly, again, again, we want to look at the strange gods, because when he ran away from his father-in-law, Rachael stole part of the gods of her father, and then she came with them. But nothing is mentioned. It's as if Jacob didn't take it serious and he left it alone. He left these people to continue worshiping other idols. So how do we say about him being a spiritual leader, Pastor Nyag?
I think even before we come to the gods that we find him telling them to remove, let's first appreciate what is happening. I think we have now journeyed with Jacob in several chapters. And one point is clear, that Jacob is a religious person, but he's never converted.
All right. All right.
Very religious, but he's never converted. You can even compare the kind of altars in Succoth and Shechem, that the altars that he's constructing. If you compare what his father and his grandfather did, when Abraham moved to any place, the first thing he used to do is to erect an altar. The same thing is to his father Isaac. But we see Jacob, he's doing it the last thing. There's a very big difference.
All right.
But also let's appreciate verse number 30 of chapter 34, which gives us the background of what is happening in that verse number, chapter 35. Now, from verse number 30, it is after the sons of Jacob have killed all the males
In Shechem.
in Shechem. Now, see the mind of Jacob. Verse number that says, then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have troubled me by making me obnoxious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And since I am few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me. I shall be destroyed, my household and I. Remember when Jacob posed as a very religious person, a committed man to God in prayer, because of the intense fear he had of facing his brother Esau. And in chapter 3, but shortly after, he was assured by God and by his brother, I have no anything against you. We see him going back, relaxing, and like, you know, he gets into an experience, maybe we can call it a spiritual complacency, and something that makes you, there's nothing more in it to fight for. What was my fear has been removed.
All right.
And so you come to a low plane in your spiritual life. And actually, if you were able to keenly check on chapter 34, he took almost 10 years between Succoth and Shechem, about 10 years. This is after his incidents with his brother, and God assuring him, because you have wrestled with God and man, you shall prevail, even against man. So that assurance makes him relax. Until God creates another situation, if I can use that term. He brings another situation of fear. So, and constantly I see Jacob is acting on the scent of the Lord whenever there is fear, something threatening in his life. And I think verse number that is very clear, that he is not reprimanding his sons for the immoral thing they have done of killing. It's all about his security.
That's right.
He's not concerned about the evil of killing. It's the consequence about his security. Since I am few, they're going to come and kill me and kill your people.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much, Pastor. I think my director tells me that we need to take a short break. Of course, when we come back, we'll still be looking at the issue of idolatry a little bit as we continue. But dear viewer, don't go too far, because we'll be coming shortly on the Bible journey. Welcome back, our dear viewer, to the Bible Journey. Remember, we are studying the book of Genesis, chapter 35. You can also interact with us and give us your comments or ask your questions using the social media platforms, Twitter at Hope_Kenya, Facebook, Hope Channel Kenya, and also the number at the bottom of your screen. Now, pastors, before we went for a short break, we were talking about the idolatry, of course, the fear and other things. But then I want still to go back to the issue of idolatry. In verse 4, I see kind of, is Jacob still entertaining idolatry? Because he requests for all these things, and they give him all the idols, they give him all the jewelry, all the earrings, all these things. But then, to me, he hides them. You know, hide, to me, in the proper English, hide is just to keep something from others, so that later on you can get it and use it. And you know, these are real jewelry. They are gold and all these precious stones. So he still keeps the idols. To my mind, is like sometimes later after the worship at Bethel, we can use this. What do you see in that, Pastor Kabira?
Maybe we are giving too much importance to the word hide.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, these idols are made of precious stones and things like that. Well, we will say destroy, but that will mean literally to smelt them. That will be the easiest way to be able to put it. Hide here could probably mean putting it away. But the fact that a tree is mentioned, that is common, it means in terms of, it could mean in terms of remembrance, to know where they are. I know that is a challenge because of the way Christians we do. We do sometimes like putting things away as we worship for the purpose of worship, meanwhile, and then we'll get back to it. It may or may not be what Jacob is saying, but by the virtue of the fact that Jacob had known Rachael, had hid these things for a while, had known for a while that these things have been there, yet he's been walking with God back and forth, it probably gives us an idea of what was remaining in Jacob's life. Jacob had not been able to rein in on his family. He may have been worshiping God. That's why he says he asked the household, because between him and God, he was clear. He had no idols. He had no anything else. But the part that was remaining was with his family. As Joshua said, 24:15 of Joshua, for me and my household will serve the Lord. It got to a point where Jacob needed to put that clear. As I began by saying, it began by Bethel. Of course, verse 5 and 6 is what I love. I hope I will be able to get it back to them. It talks about, as soon as he had taken all these things, he built an altar, and he called that altar El Bethel. Now, El Bethel is almost like repetition, because Bethel is house of God. El is still God. But he was trying to say something that means a lot here in this. Many of us could be in the house of God, but we do not have a conversation with God yet. So he calls this place El Bethel in terms of God of the house of God. That is, he is met with God of the house of God. Many of us are like Jacob, in the house of God, but we still have got other gods around us. So many of them. But until we learn to take them out, away, and then be able to meet with the God of this house, because the God of this house is the God who says something like Hosea chapter 2 verse 13. He says, I will punish her for the days of the Baals to which she burned incense. She decked herself with her earrings and jewelry and went after her lovers, but me she forgot, says the Lord. Hosea is saying that this jewelry and the earrings, like what Jacob was saying, have made people forget God, the real God, but even if they're in the house of God. It is very possible we're in the house of God, but we have forgotten who God is and what he requires of us. The theme of jewelry and earrings and what have you, I don't want to dwell on it so much on it, But every time God has been clear, before you come to worship me, he says, remove your jewelry, remove your earrings, clean yourself up. When God puts all these things together, he may not have punished somebody for putting on jewelry or earrings, but from his word about, before you come to me, remove all this jewelry and necklaces and what have you, it has a lot of spiritual significance because it deflects attention from you.
All right.
And takes it back to God.
Yeah. And Pastor, on the Pastor, you see, you want to come in, and I would also want to ask, does it, because on verse 4 it says, and they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hand. Now mark this point, and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. So they removed even the earrings. I don't see a place where it's kind of straightforward, earrings are wrong and all this jewelry, but when it comes to a point when it's time to worship God, he says remove all of them. Is he kind of saying that entirely jewelry are not good and all these earrings?
Yeah, and I was interjecting because I wanted to pick up and connect quite closely. The point I have is just expanding a little bit on Pastor's, the aspect of gods, the aspect of jewelry. There's a close connection. You see them tied, you find one, then after that, the next is appearing there. There's a close connection. The whole aspect of idolatry is attention or loyalty elsewhere other than to God. And so removing, casting away your idols, your gods, is another way of saying that, you know what, all these things that you're trusting on, all these things you're making by your own strength, by your own might. Because remember, in those times, a lot of this jewelry had other functions other than the aesthetic that we have today. Many of them were good luck charms,
Okay.
Yeah, and so others invested in them, not just for their to look beautiful, but they believe that this is like a protection, something like that, charms and these portions that people have. And even today, people have got literal gods, like jewelry they tie around their bodies to protect themselves or their businesses and so on and so forth. So this is the scenario that we have here. And so the whole aspect, once again, is that, we totally need to distrust ourselves and what we can do for ourselves, and know that we are only safe in God's hands. So the question you've asked about an outright and explicit command against jewelry, it is implied, because even today, what is the point of jewelry? It is like recreating yourself. You want to be better, you want to be to look better and all that. Casting them away is expressing a holy trust in God and satisfaction in what he only is able to do for you.
All right.
So,
thank you, Pastor. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a very important question actually, because today I think is a reality that we need to face as a church. There's more ornaments now in the church, and the church seems to be silent. And perhaps because of maybe lack of a direct text in the Bible that says, do not put on ornaments. And again, number two, because there's presence of ornaments and jewelries in the scripture, we are having mixed feelings, and people are taking sides depending on what they want in this life. But I think there are many things that the Bible has not given a direct command that are so much implied in the scripture. It becomes a very strong teaching of the Christian church. And one of them is this aspect of the jewelry. Let's look at the context. I think that the context will be able to help us to understand. Now, God calls Jacob from Laban's place. After about 20 years, he's staying in Laban's place and tells him, go to Bethel. Now, we all remember that the day Jacob is running from his father's place, because after suppressing his brother, he makes a covenant with God at Bethel. We remember that.
Yeah.
Then after about 20 years, God comes to him and tells him, go back to Bethel. We know in Bethel, Jacob had even promised if he returns to Bethel, he would even tithe.
Yeah.
So God knows the covenant that Jacob himself willingly came with God. Now, when God directs him or commands him to move from Laban's place to Bethel, we have seen in chapter 3 and chapter 4 the meanders, the alternative routes that Jacob takes to avoid a quick presence in Bethel.
All right.
He knows Bethel is the house of God. Once I get into Bethel, I need to do exactly what God demands. Now, when he moves from Laban's place, we know Rachael is sitting on some idol gods from his father.
That's right.
And Laban comes after him, not because of anything so much as his gods, which was so important. But again, Rachael tricks his father and she goes away with his father's gods. Jacob does not condemn that. But he takes different route, a very long route to the north, and meanders, and we have seen all the consequences that are coming to culminate in chapter 4 with that serious massacre. Now, God comes to him again after that crisis and tells him, arise, go to Bethel. Now, from this point where Shechem, where now Laban is, Jacob is, there's no any other route he could have taken. No, he has to get to Bethel. Now, I'm looking at Jacob in the light of a Christian life. Many people are comforted and flattered when they think where I am, I'm not in a serious, I think we classify. We classify situations. There's when God can excuse me for what I'm doing. Let me give an example. There are young people who say, let me enjoy my life before I get married, because once I get married, marriage is a bit serious stuff.
And I have to stick in there.
I have to stick in it. So let me be loose before I get married, because once I get married, then I have a direct command for me to stick to my spouse. So this is how I see, this is what I see in Jacob's life. While he is far away, about that or so miles away from the house of God, he is free to do anything he wants. Have you known, Rachael, that there are people who are so much religious when they are in the house of God? And immediately they get out of the premises of the house of God, they do anything another person can do.
Right.
That's what I see Jacob behaving. So now God comes and tells him again, now move from this place, now get to Bethel. And now he knows in the Bethel, there are things that cannot get to Bethel. One of those things, the jewelries. Well, he was in Shechem and in Succoth and all those other places, he was okay with them. But now he is conscious, he is getting into the house of God. And I think our viewers need to know, it is going to respect the house of God.
Sure.
I mean, you can't just come to the house of God in how you want. Though this man is so backslidden, he still has consciousness. He knows the house of God need to be given maximum reverence. Let's not have, especially people coming to church in how they want. God has a very direct command on how he wants to be worshipped. And that, to me, that is the teaching I find Jacob doing here. So it is not actually based on his conversion, but he's based on a religious duty to respect what God has done, even when you don't agree with it. Even when given an opportunity, you do things differently. But at least I thank him because he's conscious to know when I'm going to the house of God,
I need to be reverent enough.
I need to be reverent enough. And one aspect of showing that reverence is not putting on jewelry. And when we walk through the Bible, anywhere the mention of jewelry is, and especially in terms of the children of Israel, in the context of worship, God always demands those jewelries to be removed.
Thank you. And now, maybe as you add, Pastor Kabira, I would need you also to comment on verse 16 to 20. Rachel dies and Benjamin is born.
Yeah, because of time,
there
is a part we've missed on 9 to 15 concerning the change of name. You know, it begins
and it's as if he's repeating it again because we already encountered it before.
It's actually not repeating. That 2:28 is where we were dealing with it.
Yes.
Talks about when Jacob was wrestling with God, and he says something. Your name shall no more be Jacob, but Israel. Shall. That is, I know there's something that is you require to do. At that particular time, he still had the idols with him. When he dispensed off the idols, when he worshipped God, him and the entire family, that is when his name now became Israel.
So
and then God affirmed, now the blessings afresh, like the God of what? Like the blessings, the same blessings that he spoke to Abraham and Isaac, now he affirms them again. So to me, what it seems, I don't know what you were about to say, but what it seems to me is God told Jacob, as we've been beginning by saying, we may be special, but still we will go through the same process as any other Christian. We may have been called for a specific purpose, but that does not mean we will jump over issues of morality. It does not mean we'll jump issues of life and then just become holy immediately as soon as God has called us. All of us here are pastors. It does not mean that we have a special... now you are a pastor. After discussing the Bible that long. It does not mean we have a special dispensation where we do not go through the normal life. We still go through the normal life. The virtue that God has called us to a specific work does not mean we will go through something that is different. We go through the same things. We have issues with our children. We have issues with our wives. We have favorites. We will sin. Sometimes we will pretend we don't see what our children are doing. Similarly to Jacob. But until Jacob learned to be able to be the father, the priest of the house. Before, he was his own priest. Him and who was wrestling with God? Jacob. Who talked with God? Jacob.
That's right.
But until when he became Jacob, until when he learned to be able to pray with his entire family. That is, let's take away all these idols. Let us take away all this. Then now his name Israel meant something.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
And just quickly, I also want to add another perspective to that. Israel actually means, God fights. Remember, Jacob has just come from an ordeal. He's still afraid. That aspect is still there. As he's running away, he's afraid. And I think God is trying to remind him once again that, you know what? These are not your battles. These are my battles. I have called you. I have commissioned you. So long as you remain on course, on my agenda, I am still going to be fighting for you. Israel means God fights on behalf. He'll be fighting for Jacob throughout his life. So I think he needed that reminder, because at some point, and we all do, we need it. Some point we think that we need to fight these battles ourselves. God is fighting for us.
Yeah, and Pastor, as you add, because of time, we have 5-6 minutes there. I would also need you to comment on Rachel's death and the birth of Benjamin, and of course the controversy on names. Rachel calls him Benoni, and then Jacob calls him Benjamin.
And a quick one on picking on what Pastor has mentioned on the meaning of Israel. I think one of the themes I said in chapter 5 is a gracious God. So God, actually, when we read verse number 10, and it says, and God saying to him, your name is Jacob, You know what that means?
Deceiver.
You are a deceiver.
Liar.
And you have lived true to this name.
That's right.
And I don't think you're going to change.
Yeah.
But anyway, because it's me, not you. I changed your name, and your name shall remain. I am changing your name through grace, not based on your actions.
All right.
You have witnessed this. You've been fighting all along. You even fought with me. But you know your battles can avail nothing.
That's right.
Yeah.
So graciously, I'm giving you a name that means God fights. So that even when you go to, and your generations will come and they'll be conquering Canaan, it won't be about you or them,
That's
it's
right.
about me. So God is creating a picture of a gracious God. And I think we appreciate in terms of salvation that we are not saved by works, but it's through grace.
Amen.
It's a very, very important point. But then the issue of Rachel dying and the birth of Benjamin, I think to me, I may not have much to put into this. Rachel has to die because death is natural. I don't think that God is killing Rachel for any reason.
Yeah.
But we need to get one point very clear. You see, Rachel has deceived her father, sat on his gods, hid them completely, and as a result of presence of these gods in Jacob's camp for about 10 years or so, we see after the massacre, actually, there is one of the reasons why Jacob says remove these things is because it was not just that one which Rachel had sat on. Remember, they have taken wives and maids and children of the people of Shechem. So those people are idol worshippers. So right now in the camp of Jacob, there are so many idol gods. But I want to believe Jacob also lacks some moral authority because all along the idol gods have been in his camp through his wife Rachel. So also God has to deal with Rachel. And they want to see the consequences of our own actions of keeping the idol gods. As a result, why she dies during birth, painfully. That's what I want to connect it, because you cannot commit an evil and go away with it. Someday there's a payday.
Yeah.
And that's maybe what I can put into this. My colleague
Now,
pastors
and
have
especially
something
talk
different.
also about, do these names have any significance? Benoni and Benjamin, why not allow him to be called Benoni?
I'll begin with Rachel. Remember what she said in chapter 30, verse 1. She said, give me children
And
or
I
else I'll die. So what has happened? Exactly what she wanted, she has got it.
Now there is nothing left of her.
You know,
She has to
sometimes it's not good to be able to just speak things. It's not good to be able to almost swear or like, give me this or this. You know, this is God we are giving conditions to. We need to be able
to pray for.
Watch out what you pray for. If I will be able, watch out what you pray, we wish for, because don't just, as God says, do not utter words that are, what is that word? It's useless. I don't know
Careless
how.
words.
Careless words. Do not utter careless words, because this lady dies in childbirth, and she had said, "Give me children, or else I die." So God has given her. Of course, it's a random thought that occurred to me, that Rachel dies the first one instead of Leah. You know, like it's like what she said, she got it. But anyway, Benjamin, when she's dying, she calls the child Ben-Oni, meaning son of sorrow. But Benjamin calls him son of the
Jacob.
right hand.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, Jacob calls him Benjamin.
Jacob
Son of-
calls him son of the right hand. In real sense, it's like Jacob has a newfound faith. He does not see it as a loss per se. that finally I also have a child who can be on my right hand. And you see how he put Jacob so close, of course. He put Jacob. He also loved Joseph. He also loved Joseph. But on his right hand, he also had Benjamin, because he was so close. He didn't want to lose him as he had lost Jacob. That's as he had lost Joseph. That is much later. Of course, it gives the importance of children, because what I'm able to connect with from verse 27 to 29 is like, as soon as Jacob came home, Isaac died, and Esau and Jacob buried. That is how the Bible ends. Esau and Jacob buried him, buried his father. So, yeah, in real sense, we are talking about they did their obligation as children to bury their parent, to bury their father. So to also him, he looks at Benjamin as like that child who will also be there for me at a particular time.
And then quickly also, you know,
as you also comment on verse 22, Reuben sleeps with his father's concubine, and nothing much is said actually in the Bible. It's just like he slept with his father's concubine.
That's right, yeah. So, you know, always my chaplain gear always kicks in. This was a wise move that Jacob did. I don't think it was disrespecting the wife who has now passed away. I want you to imagine your son living throughout his life with this burden of a name, Benoni, son of sorrow.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, literally, when you open up that name, is the son who killed his mother at birth. And that is traumatizing, and you don't want to have that tag and identity the rest of your life. Yeah, so I think wise move from Jacob, but it also reflects on a renewed Jacob. Gradually, Jacob is starting to move from a mechanical relationship with God. It is gradually becoming authentic. And we are starting to have, you know, signs, bits and pieces of that here. And this is one of that here, starting to look at a brighter perspective. On our journey home, terrible things are going to happen to us. And I think as Christians, we need to know that. We need to remember that. That having accepted Christ, as we journey home, you know, to Bethel, to meet our father, Isaac, in quotes, we are going to suffer some of the worst things in life. The normal vicissitudes of humanity, we don't escape that by simply being Christians. We go through that, we are still in the world of sin. So death occurs here, there's even Deborah, and of course Rachel. And finally, on Reuben, the eldest, sleeping with the wives, with the father's concubine, sin always knocks later. It always knocks later, and we pay for it. There are always consequences.
Two things here. Rachel dies, and Jacob changes the last son of Rachel's name. To me, Rachel has to die. In the light of Hebrew chapter 12, you know, it says, do away with that sin which easily ensnares and entangles. I think Rachel has been a constant snare. You ask me, to the life of Jacob. If you check through, she has been a reason why Jacob has not been able to stand as a man. And so she had to die as a way of God dealing with that. But also, Jacob is aware of the meanings and the significance of names.
That's right.
Remember, shortly before this, God changes his name. From a negative name to a positive name. He has come to learn that names actually have a lot of meaning. He was called Jacob, a deceiver, and he has lived to that name. So if this boy name means sorrow, or one who has killed or afflicted the family, his entire life may be true. He may be there as a person who will continue afflicting the family. Jacob is careful. So he takes the responsibility, as he has learned from his father God, when he changed his name, to give him a name that will have a positive impact to the family. Reuben's act of sleeping with these concubines, I think parents need to learn. You know, there are many things parents do. If you are a drunkard, how do you tell a child not to drink? If you smoke, how do you tell a child not to smoke? If you have a mpango kando, And your children are able to see. They know. If you're having an affair and they know it, their mother knows, the children see what you're doing. So when they become of age, they shall also do the same thing. At that particular time, as a parent, to be unable to speak. So I think Jacob took so many concubines. After the sons killed, they took these wives and they are here and they're sleeping with them. We have also seen him sleeping with maids. So the sons, they were growing. They have been growing. Reuben now has become of age. He knows what a man is supposed to do, what his father's been doing. So I think parents need to learn to be careful. At times we want to, because of selfish gains, but let's be careful that we are bringing up a generation that we can easily pass on a very negative trait. And I think to me that is what I'm learning. It is not a dose in the scriptures. It is an evil in the family, and the consequence is being yielded in the same family.
Thank you. I think just because of time, we'll have to wrap it there, to end it there. But I think one crucial message that I've gotten in this, our dear viewer, is God's instruction is let's go back to Him. Let's go back to His house. We sometimes take too long, like Jacob did. We take too much time. We dilly-dally a lot. But the end game is go back to Bethel. Go back to the house of God. And thank you very much for being with us. I hope you stop your dilly-dallying also, as I stop mine, as we stop ours here, and go back to the house of God. Thank you very much for being with us on the set. May God bless you for all the input. And as we end, maybe Pastor?
Our gracious Father, once again, as we request all of you to be with us as we are starting this program, we thank you for your providence. We thank you for your presence. We thank you for speaking to us and through us to our viewers. May you bless our souls and prepare us to have a moment with you, an experience with you. We thank you for your grace. Even our viewers who are struggling with sin out there, Lord, may you remind them, as you are gracious to Jacob, you are gracious to them. And because you have changed Jacob's name, you can still change their names. Bless us all. We pray in Jesus' name.
Amen. 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 Thank you very much. God bless you. See you next time.
Right.